the Book Baron. Welcome in, everybody. So today I'm very excited because we are going to be talking about everything that I read in April, which was not that much. Now, I've said that a lot of times because of slump reasons, but this time that's not the case. I went on vacation, so that was a week that was just kind of a wash. I was barely reading, and then, prepping for vacation, I always feel like reads into reading time? That's not right. Eats into reading time. On that note, it is worth noting, why do I keep repeating the word note? Okay, we need to get this out of the way. I have vertigo. I came back from my trip. I have a horrible, horrible vertigo. It's giving me horrific brain fog. SOS. Someone help me. I'm not doing well. I keep misspeaking and sometimes I just lose track of what I'm talking about. I don't know what kind of weird ass energy this video is gonna have. My May TBR, I filmed that and I was like, that was a choice. That was a choice. That was some weird energy brought to that video. So this might be more of the same, most unfortunately, because I'm not any better even though it's like a week later. So the books that we're gonna be talking about, definitely a lot of different subgenres. I read some like older fantasies from like the 2000s and even before that. I have a thriller on here. I went out of the romance genre. What's happening right now? I also have some new releases, some hyped romances that have been on my TBR forever, and I have a new favorite fantasy romance. I know, very exciting. So without further ado, let's jump into the books. All right, first things first, I read Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. No one look at this Target sticker. I can't be bothered to get it off.
That's what she said.
It's the second book in the Rose Hill series? It feels so wrong not to call it Rose Hill Ranch, but there's no ranch because this is not a cowboy romance. It's more of a horse trainer? Horse boy? I feel like that has a different connotation. Regardless, he trains some horses. It's small town, single dad, celebrity heroine. So our heroine is a famous country singer and she's had a pretty brutal breakup. She decides to escape the press, get away from the paparazzi, get some peace. To do that, she ends up going kind of unannounced to Ford, the hero from the first book. Why can't I remember the name of this book? I want to say Wildmouth so bad. That is not it. I'm just naming a random body part. Wild Love? I don't know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The first book, it's pink. The hero from that one has like a recording studio or record label, and she's gonna go record with him. She has a little bit of a snafu with her GPS on her way out there, so she's just kind of cruising the open road, and she comes upon a bear, and she was like, you know what makes relatable content? Hanging out with a bear. So she decides to do that, not realizing the grave danger she's placed herself in. That's where Weston, our horse trainer boy, comes in. He helps her escape the clutches of this bear, and thus begins their very whirlwind romance. And he then introduces her to his two children, or rather the children introduce themselves. They all fall in love happily ever after, except for celebrity's kind of a bitch, and so that might be the thing that pulls them apart for good. So okay, this was kind of my last shot for Elsie Silver. I haven't had a lot of success with her last couple of releases. They're missing that Elsie Silver sparkle, and I had heard everyone was like, oh my god, she's back, Wild Eyes, yay. So then I was like, well, this is my last shot for her because it's also one of the last physical copies that I have of her books. Unfortunately, this was not the redemption arc I had hoped for Miss Elsie. So I really struggled with hello, yes? Can I get a noun? So I struggled with the heroine because she was a little bit hard to empathize with. She came off naive because part of her character arc is like, poor little rich girl, she doesn't know anything about nature and doesn't know how to make a bed, which in this economy, I just don't really have a lot of empathy for. I'm so sorry. She did have some childhood trauma from being a like celebrity. I was gonna say celebrity child. That's not right. A child star. That's the word I want. That would have been fun to lean into, especially because that's been making the rounds in the media lately with all these child stars that have now grown up and are talking about their stories. I just didn't feel like that was leaned into enough for her character arc. A lot of it was just like, I don't know how to do things because I was so rich. And I just bothered me. Also, side note, I can't figure out where she fits in the music industry because like she's got paparazzi coming after her all the time and she can't get any peace. So that would suggest that she's really popular. But also like she was talking about like flying coach and being in like the middle with no security. She wasn't flying a private jet of any kind, whether hers or like some smaller airline thing. I don't know. I was very confused by that. But anyways, let's move on. Let's talk about the hero. The hero was very sweet. I loved watching him interact with his kids. He was a little too perfect. He always responded perfectly calm, never very angry. And I just remember him being like grumpier and more standoffish in the prior book. I didn't feel like we got any of that. I feel like this was a different person. And I think that kind of made the romance itself then feel very saccharine. And because there was no tension, no stakes, there was literally nothing keeping these two apart, then like this entire entire book, I'm like, why aren't you getting together? You guys have pretty much instantly been drawn to each other, instantly been horny for one another. Why aren't you just getting together? So it just feels like it lacked a little bit of teeth, a little bit of grit. And then there was like more corny stuff coming in with like, music is all about coming from the heart. There was nothing about strategy, about the machine that is music. And I was like, I just don't think that that's really that original of a storyline. Overall, this was just like a little bit too easy, too linear. There wasn't enough grit for me, and so I'm probably going to give this one a rating of 3 stars, and this is very likely my last Elsie Silver. All right, next up we have another contemporary. It's the second book in the new interconnected series that Abby Jimenez is putting out. It's The Night We Met by Abby Jimenez. Now that I've said her name twice, now you know the author for sure. Contemporary rom-com. It's kind of got a love triangle. So this one is about Larissa, and Larissa needs a ride home from a concert. She has 2 different guys that she can pick from. She has no idea that she has met the absolute perfect man for her that very night. Her and Chris have a ton of fun co-parenting their Yorkie. They have very similar taste in books and love discussing them. They love rating bread. They're just very cute. And Chris just makes life so much easier for Larissa. But Chris isn't the one that drove Larissa home that night. No, that's her now boyfriend, Mike, Chris's best friend. So Chris has been relegated to the sidelines where he willingly stays if it means that Larissa will be happy. So there is so much of this that has that magic that is just so Abby Jimenez, great banter that makes me laugh out loud, side characters that are very multifaceted, that mean well most of the time, but have these big blind spots. I loved the hero in this one. I really feel like this had a very even split between the hero and the heroine's arc. His was focused a lot on not feeling attractive enough or being interesting enough for the heroine. He's kind of the adult in the friend group, and I feel like usually that's something that the heroine usually struggles with, and so it was unique to see that from a hero. I also really loved Larissa because she's kind of tired, worn down. She's been dealt just such a shit hand in life, and she keeps getting crappy cards, and she just needs like one thing to be easy, but she keeps kind of trying to show up even when it seems like they're progressively, that's not a word, progressively getting worse. And I liked just seeing how Chris took so much joy in making Larissa's life easier. And I really like that Abby did not cheap out on making this love triangle hard. She didn't make Mike this terrible person. He was a good guy that was going through some stuff, and you had a lot of sympathy for him. And so there's like a little part of you that's like rooting for him, even though you know heartbreak's around the corner and you can see how ill matched Larissa and Mike are. So it really made for good tension. You really wanted everyone to win, and there was not an outcome where that happened. And it made the romance truly, truly slow burn because of that. Like, I was like, did Miss Ma'am read a bunch of Mariana Zapata before writing this book? Because I was like 80% in, and I was like, they haven't gotten together yet. What's happening here? I think that is where this kind of like fumbled a little bit for me, because the ending felt a little bit too mild. It didn't have that big release of tension. It was like a small series of little scenes that resolved a bunch of different aspects of the plot. And so it never felt like you got that big like, oh, okay, my characters are good. And even how they kind of got together, I was kind of like, well, that's not really the big show that I was hoping for. That's not really what I'm trying to say. It just didn't have that like punch that I was kind of hoping to like wrap everything up. So I gave this one a rating of 4 stars. So next up, I read The Wind's Call by T.A. White, and this is the 4th book in the Broken Land series. It's the first book with a new couple, however, and it's a fantasy romance. So this is about our heroine, Eva, who is a herd mistress, and she cares for the horses for a nomadic people. So that's a pretty well-esteemed position. That's not what I mean. It's a position with high esteem. There we go. I got there. But the thing is that Eva is an outsider in the Trateri. They tend to hold anyone who is not born Trateri at an arm's length. So it means that sometimes people don't take her very seriously. So she ends up getting in a bit of a spat with a new apprentice. She rides out into the woods just trying to clear her head and comes upon a mysterious creature, a winged horse. Now, it turns out that this is going to open up a much desired alliance between this species and the Trateri, which means that Eva now has to venture away from the Trateri that she is known for pretty much all her life into the highlands with monsters and beasts and terrible terrain with Caden and a few of the warlords most trusted in order to make this alliance happen. But there is dissent growing in the Trateri ranks, and that means that Eva's gonna need to be really careful with who she trusts. chaos. So this one, I think when I look at the series as a whole, felt a lot more focused on the heroine and felt very fantasy first. This was a lot about the heroine kind of discovering more about her capabilities, about what makes her unique, about how she is different from the Triteri, and that's actually a good thing instead of trying to constantly fit in with them. And then also kind of grow a spine. She's a very soft character. She's a very soft heroine. She's not a warrior. She does have some spine, but she's not a very fierce person by nature. I also felt like this one, the romance wasn't as well woven into. It's definitely there, but it's like a subplot versus like the prior books that felt like it was very interwoven within the plot itself, and the relationship was kind of a cornerstone of the plot. Why do I keep saying plot? I need to stop. I think overall this book just had a little bit of a quieter feel. Although I really enjoyed this installment, I think I'm gonna give this one a rating of 4 stars. So next up we have Make It Stop, and this is by Elle Mitchell. This is the second book, the finale in the West Pines Bullies duet. So I was lucky to get an arc, so I was able to read this at the beginning of the month, but I think it's released now. It released at like April 28th or something like that. So you too can finish this duet now. It's a college bully, why choose, dark romance, step sibling, sneeze of hockey. So because it's a proper duet, girl, what are you talking about? Because I don't want to spoil anything that happens in this second book, I'm going to tell you about the first book, and then we'll get into my spoiler. Hello? My spoiler-free thoughts. I'm not well. Is this a brain bleed? So we have Sage, and she knows the exact day her life went to shit. So she finds out that her boyfriend is cheating on her with her best friend the same day that she has to move to a small town because her mom married her boss, and now she's gonna move in with him and his son. So this kind of derails high school for her. Rather than her stepbrother being this cute little boy that plays with Legos, it turns out he is older than her and an absolute menace, and he doesn't like that his dad has acquired a shiny new family. So he really takes it out on her with the help of his friends. Ill-advised or not, Sage does decide upon graduation that she's going to go to the same college. And that poses just a bit of a problem for her because she ends up having a little oopsie daisies, a little bit of an incident where she could go to prison for life potentially. And so she contacts Elias, Dax, and Nolan to help her cover it up, to become her co-conspirators. Now they agree, but she is going to have to do whatever they want. I don't even know what that means. Whatever they want, whenever they want. But things get even more complicated when Sage is targeted by a stalker who seems to know their shared secret. To protect themselves, they tighten their ranks, and Sage just gotta move in with them for protection, obviously. So I really enjoyed this one. This had a lot of the things that I liked in the first book. I really love how Elle Mitchell writes. I love her characters, her beaten down heroines that have some spine. She always has a moment with her heroines where they call out some bullshit that in other books might have kind of flown under the radar, might have even been treated as a swoon moment. Like I just remember one of the heroes being like, "You fix me," and she's like, "That's not my fucking job." It just elevates her storytelling a little bit for me. And I liked that Sage really stuck to her guns. When the boys screwed up, she really took them to task. Apologizing wasn't enough. They needed to show that they changed, and she really took them to task. Now, I think what really prevented this, unfortunately, from being a full 5 stars is this felt a little bloated. It got repetitive, especially when it came to the spice. The same things were said, the same things were done. 2 of the heroes kind of felt very similar once they got in the bedroom, which I think is a problem when you're using these spicy scenes for development. They don't feel like individuals. There was also a few scenes that felt like they added to the length and were also out of character, would have like a big emotional outburst, and I was kind of like, why is this happening? Other than to have a comforting scene where spicy things happen. I think that just kind of added to the length and also felt strange. One thing that I think, although it was well set up, I just never bought, there was an attempt at misdirection that I could see was being seeded throughout the prior book, but I never quite bought into it, so I got frustrated with my characters when they bought into it. I was like, how can you not see through this bullshit? Overall, I did have a good time with it, so I'm gonna give this one a rating of 4 stars as well. Next up, we have our vlog books, my vlog books. If you want to see my full thoughts, I'll link that up here. I think it's up here or up here. Guys, I have vertigo. Have I mentioned that yet on the video? It doesn't really matter. Somewhere up here, you're gonna find it. If you want to see all of my thoughts, I'm gonna try and go faster. We'll see if I actually do it. For some reason, I'm going in reverse order. order. I don't know why I chose to do that. But nonetheless, we are here and we're going to continue. So the first one that I have for you is His by Aubrey Dark. This is a dark romance, captor-captive, serial unaliver. So we have our heroine who is a librarian and she's had a bit of a dry spell when it comes to love and relationships and spicier things. So her other librarian friend is like, you should try and smooch the next hot guy that you see. So she does that, asks if he wants to go on a date. He's like, ooh, awkward. I don't date. So she doesn't really want to tell her librarian friend that things didn't exactly go how she was hoping they would. So her librarian friend thinks that she's helping her out when she hands her a piece of paper. She's like, this fell out of his pocket. You can use this to talk to him the next time he comes in. So he comes in, she tries to talk to him and just can't quite catch him at the library. Like the mentally sound person she is, she follows him to his house and then notices through the window that he has someone captive, a library patron that has been splashed all over the news. And he's about to unalive him because he's a Dexter knockoff of sorts. But when he realizes that she has seen him, she takes him, what? Nope. Reverse that. He takes her captive. So this one, I think, was just chronically underdeveloped. Characters were underdeveloped. Personalities seemed to be pretty flat, then bled into the relationship because they're not bringing much to the table other than like, oh my God, I've never felt this way about a person before. And I could tell that the author was aware of some of the things psychologically that might happen to someone while they're in captivity, or some of the cognitive dissonance that arises with that and the ways that people will rationalize things. But it was like she was too excited to get to those parts that she didn't build into them. So emotionally, it just kind of felt all over the place. So I ended up giving this one a rating of 2 stars. I think that there's better captives, although your mileage may vary if you're new to the genre. Then we have Unbreak My Heart by Nicole Jacquelyn. This is a military romance, second chance, single dad, kind of got a messy, toxic sort of vibe. The setup for this one is like, what would you do if your soulmate married your best friend? And that's what's happened to Katie. So Katie has always had a bit of a crush on Shane. They kind of were brought up together in their later teen years because her aunt and uncle had foster kids kind of coming in and out of their house, and Shane was one of them. So she always had a bit of a thing for him, but he only had eyes for Rachel, her roommate from college. So those two end up getting married and having many, many babies. Shane is part of the military, so he ends up going on deployment, which means that Katie often steps in as almost like a third parent to these kids to help out Rachel while he's away. Now, unfortunately, Rachel does end up passing away after a car accident, leaving Shane to care for 4 kids, one of them being a newborn baby. He's drowning, so he ends up turning to Katie to help out. Things quickly go from him trying to keep her at an arm's length, treat her like the nanny, to much sexier things, which just complicate how this whole family is going to move forward. So my thoughts on this one, I really enjoyed this one. I thought both the characters here had great character arcs. They always felt like they were really trying to do their best. There's a lot of maturing that both of them have to do and really learning to see the other person in a different way than they have before. There's also a lot of really sweet moments with the kids, and this doesn't shy away from the kind of stressful and less glamorous parts of parenting. It was a sweet mess. One thing that prevented this from being a 5-star, however, was that I just didn't feel like that ending really stuck. Similar to The Night We Met, I just never got that full sigh of relief that I really would have wanted to make that a 5-star, so I did give this one a rating of 4 stars. So then we get to the first book in the vlog, which is The Brit by Jodi, Elle, and Malpas. This is, I believe, part of an interconnected series. It's a dark mafia romance, captive. It's kind of got a hostage situation, which I guess is implied by captive. I'm gonna move on. Premise for this one, our hero, when he is young, is adopted by a mafioso, a leader, if you will, of the mafia, which is what a mafioso is, I think. Actually, I don't know what the definition is, so we're gonna move on and pretend I didn't say that. Regardless, he adopts him when he's kind of like a young boy. When this mafia leader ends up passing, he passes the reins to our hero, and he inherits a bit of a problem. He has been paying into a campaign for a local, I wanted desperately to say celebrity, and that's just not it. Although there are a lot of celebrities going into politics. Politician, that's the word I want. He's been paying for a part of a campaign for a politician with the understanding that this politician then, when he gets power, is going to help him get control of this dock, or where they import a lot of their goods. Except for this guy isn't upholding his end of the bargain. So he takes someone very dear to the politician, which is our heroine, Rose, his mistress. Turns out though that she is not a mistress by choice. Someone has taken away her child and only gives her bits of information information when she provides them with information on whatever John she's sort of been assigned to. But her mark is none the wiser. They think they're in a true relationship. So Danny, our hero, ends up taking our heroine. She's like, okay, well, I still want to get these snippets of information on my kid, so I'm going to continue to spy. It's just going to be on Danny now. So I think that this book is fine. Has a little bit of that like Beauty and the Beast. It turns out he's not that monstrous, you guys, and him just being really nice and spending a lot of money on her and not treating her like a skank, which all of the other Johns seem to do. There's a little bit of the Doc Pure stuff that kind of turns into some action, but overall it was a little bit of a generic mafia romance. Good if you're new to the genre, but if you've read in this subgenre before, I would say skip this one. So I gave this one a rating of 3 stars. Finally, we're done with the vlog books. Okay, let's move on and talk about My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney. That's who I'm talking about. It's a standalone psychological thriller. Our heroine is Eden Fox, and she is on the cusp of making it as an artist. She's about to have an art expedition. Oh, poor Dum Dum here is looking for the word exhibit. Exhibit's the word, not expedition. What in the safari was I thinking? So she heads out on a jog to kind of like clear her mind, relax a little bit. When she returns to the house that she recently moved into, nothing is as it should be. Her key doesn't fit in the lock. When she knocks on the door, her husband claims to not know who she is, and a woman who looks eerily similar to her shows up and says that she is Eden Fox. With no phone, no ID, nothing to prove that she is the real Eden Fox, she ends up being treated as an intruder and forced to flee the scene and figure out what's going on here. My first thought when I picked this up is, why am I reading a thriller? And yet, I was sucked in. This was one of those that I could not put together. I had so many different guesses. I was gripped the entire time because I felt like the pieces were like right there and I could get them if I just kept reading and put together the details a little bit more. So I was like blown away by the twist ending. I had such a great time while I was reading this book. However, when I paused to think about the twist ending, the more I thought about it, the more it didn't make sense to me. So in the moment, I was like, 4 stars, this is a great thriller. In hindsight, I'm like, maybe it's more of a 2 or a 3 because that twist ending doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work. There's too many plot holes, but it's a great read if you just don't think about it too much. All right, then I moved on to The Heiress at Sea with his by Christy Caldwell. Great enunciating. You're doing wonderful, honey. The Heiress at Sea by Christy Caldwell. It's the second book in the McLeods of Mayfair, but it can be read as a standalone. I'm falling apart. It can be read as a standalone. So this is a historical romance. It's got a heroine disguising herself as a boy. We've got forced proximity, some swashbuckling. I think our heroine's name is supposed to be Cassia. I want to say Kasha with every fiber of my being, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Our heroine's name is Kasha, and she has accepted her fate as a spinster, but she wants adventure. She doesn't want to be sitting in drawing rooms or going to balls, so she decides to disguise herself as a boy and sneak onto the ship of someone that she knows. I think it's her brother. But when she is on the open seas, she realizes that she got the boat name wrong, and she is actually on the boat of notorious privateer Nathaniel Elsby. Now, Nathaniel, this is his last adventure until he has to become the Duke. He was actually the second born, but in the wake of his older brother's death, he now has to take over the dukedom. So this is his last mission at sea. But this is all thwarted by what seems to be the greenest of deckhands that he's ever had in his life, but turns out is a woman in disguise. Oh, this book irks me so much. I was having such a hard time finding my next book because I was like, I know what I want. I was doing all my research because I don't know a ton about historicals. I found this one and I was like, yes, you guys, I hated this book. The main problem truly is just the heroine. She feels like Amelia Bedelia and she's just so annoying as a result. And it's not like she takes things like too literally where you're kind of like, well, that was a little bit funny. It's like she's intentionally obtuse. She is asked to paint a wall, and instead of just painting a wall with white paint, which she is provided with, she pulls out all of her art supplies and paints a mural. And then she would not shut up. Oh my God, she would not stop talking. And she didn't even try to act like a boy. Like, she dressed like a boy, but then she's constantly crying and getting her feelings hurt. And she just like does not have any strategy for how she's going to keep this ruse up whatsoever. It's like she wanted people to figure it out. It was so annoying. And then when the hero was kind of like starting to get into her, I was like, why? She's the most obnoxious person I've ever had the displeasure of reading. I really wanted shipmates to throw her overboard, to be honest. I was like, I hope this goes somewhere else. Like, so desperately. for. Like, I'm not gonna rate this because I DNF'd it. So I was still in the mood for shipwrecks and such, so I end up moving on to Surviving Raine by Shay Savage. This is the first in a duet. It's a survival contemporary romance with a single POV from the hero. So our hero's name is Sebastian Stark. He is the captain of a boat that caters to the elite and sails the Caribbean seas. He's a loner, he's an alcoholic, and he is a big old fuckboy. Now, unfortunately, in a storm, his boat ends up capsizing, and he is now stuck on a life raft with one of his passengers by the name of Raine. Now, the two of them have to try and survive together on this raft while he is suffering from DTs. And while he really tries to keep his distance, even the stoniest of people can't help but open up, especially when it turns out their pasts are much more intertwined than they ever suspected. I had such a fun time being in this hero's perspective. He has so many different strategies of how to survive at sea. Internal dialogue was hilarious because he's very, very crass, but it would be so funny because he'd be like, oh, she's so tiny, I could probably pick her up with one arm. Well, actually, she's been laying on my arm for a little bit and it kind of hurts, so she might be heavier than I thought. I could definitely do her with 2 arms. There was just so many things like that that had me kind of laughing to myself. And then being in his perspective was also fun because you got to see all the little ways he's sacrificing without letting the heroine know that it's even happening. And I loved that the heroine just flat out tells him that she's treating him like an abused pit bull. And you know what? The strategy works because she slowly gains trust, gets him to empathize with her because he really does try and hold her at a distance. But I do think that that's where this book lost me a little bit because there's this present timeline where they're trying to survive and then there's like flashbacks. While they're dramatic and make for a good story itself, I felt like it was just too disconnected from their survival situation, and I wanted more challenges from nature, and instead a lot of the plot was like overcoming past traumas, and it got kind of repetitive because as much as I love a guy who does not think he's worthy of a girl, it got to a point where I was like, I need you to stop needing reassurance every 4 seconds. It just got a little bit old. So unfortunately, it was like the further I got into the book, the less I liked it. So I gave this one a rating of 3 stars. Then I moved on to a historical, to Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. This is a classical? That's not right. A classic and a historical. Basically, the premise for this, our heroine's name is Feeney. She is sent to live with her cousins and aunts and uncle who are much richer than her. So she's kind of like the outcast. She's a little bit ostracized. Everyone's like, ugh, gross, the poor over there. And the only person she can really confide in is her cousin Edmund. When she turns 18, things really get turned on their head because a new family moves into town, and the brother and sister from this family are just outrageous and really shake things up for Feeney. Themes of social class and morality and how the wealthy can be corrupted. So this was just a hard no for me. Where's the Jane Austen I know? It was hard to read because Fanny's not a very strong character, which doesn't really bother me, but it was really hard to read about her being pushed around, just being treated so poorly, and there was nothing and no one doing anything about it. And so it was like the plot and a lot of things just happened to the heroine and she was just sort of like passively there. And this was just really missing a lot of like the wit and the banter, that magic that I feel like Pride and Prejudice has. I mean, even Sense and Sensibility, which I read like a couple months ago, has more drama and relatable heroines that you are really trying to root for. I didn't feel like I could root for this heroine. There was nothing to her. And this is the kind of like classic, this is the type of lit fic that I really hate because it's so intent on making specific points. The author has forgotten to make the story that they're telling interesting to the reader in the first place. Honestly, I was reading this and I was like, who wrote this? Because certainly it's not Jane Austen. I give this a rating of 2 stars. So then we move on to a good one. Oh guys, I'm so excited about this one. So then we have Warprize by Elizabeth Vaughan. This is the first book in the Chronicles of the Warlands trilogy. It's a fantasy romance. It's got a warlord hero, a healer heroine. We've got clashing of cultures. So our heroine's name is Laura. She is a healer and she's also a princess. Her father has passed and her kind of useless half-brother is now on the throne. He's got a lot of interesting plans that go against basically what everyone else wants to do. And as a result, their kingdom is losing a battle with the neighboring kingdom, the Firelanders, who are the people of the plains. She can't really do anything. She doesn't really have any power as a princess, and she's not a warrior, so she does what she can and heals the fallen on their side, but also the ones that are held captive that are part of the Firelanders on the opposing side. I just used so many words to say what I wanted to say, but I think you understand me. Now, when the warlord ends up coming to negotiate the terms of surrender, he demands a tribute, and he takes that in the form of Laura, who's going to be demoted from princess to slave amongst his people, and thus begins her life with the Firelanders. So this one, oh my god, if you guys love like a barbarian, like a warlord hero, but has respect and consent. Might I recommend this one? Oh, I ate this up. I love both of these characters. The heroine knows a ton about healing, and she can be so strong-willed, but she's also practical, knows when to pick her battles, and can get a strategy together, knows her weaknesses, knows how to compensate for those with other knowledge that she has. The hero is a barbarian without being like a jerk or an asshole. He's actually surprisingly funny when you kind of get to know him, but he does have to have that warlord front. He needs to present as strong. And I just felt like neither of these characters really came across as like overly stubborn, actual compromise happening on both sides. And it just felt very like mature and practical compared to some of the other fantasy romances that I've read recently. And I think that the author really did a lot with very little interaction between these two. There was a lot of tension created between like a secret smile, a shared understanding, a little inside joke, craving to see or know a little bit more, looking over when they know they shouldn't. Also has, because they're from two different cultures, a lot of miscommunication, but it is done so well. This is how you do miscommunication. They speak different languages, so one of them is always not in their native tongue. And that means that sometimes things get missed. They don't even realize that they're miscommunicating. Sometimes there's not words that translate. Sometimes it's assumed that one of them understands what they mean. And it's like all these little accidental assumptions that they make because of their own cultural lens. I truly had nothing that I disliked about this book. I will say in hindsight, when I kind of look at the plot overall, I'm like, that is a little bit predictable. It's not like it's like totally earth-shattering. I just think this was one of those that is done so very well. This also reminds me a little bit of the Pathfinder series. If you've read that and are looking for something else, give this one a go. I give this one a rating of 5 stars, and I'm so excited to read the next books in the series. Now, this brings us to our final book, which is from my vlog. I mentioned that I purchased this, and it is Dragon Prince by Melanie Rawn. So this is the first in the Dragon Prince trilogy. It's an epic fantasy. We've got a desert kingdom, tons of political intrigue, arranged / kind of fated marriage. This is set in a fantasy world where the world is divided up into princedoms that are always kind of hovering on the brink of war. Hero's name is Ronan, and he was recently crowned the prince of a desert kingdom. He inherited the throne after his father ended up passing away in a dragon hunting accident. So when he takes the throne, he has a couple of different goals. One is he wants permanent peace with the warring princedom, and he wants to protect the dragons. He doesn't want people to hunt them. This is usually something done to prove your manhood, because Ronan knows that the dragons actually hold a secret that could be the secret to saving his people. Now, what does a prince need when he inherits the throne? He needs a princess to go along with him. So that is going to be Sinead, our Sunrunner witch. Essentially, she has magic which uses sunlight and moonlight, and she's been kind of fated by the fires to be Ronan's bride. This means that these two are now caught up in schemes between the Lady of Goddess Keep, one of the Sunrunner witchy ladies, Ronan's plans, and Ronan's sworn enemy, the High Prince. So this one I feel so mixed about. So style-wise, this definitely reminds me of something like Dune or Game of Thrones. It has that big epic feel, a lot of head-hopping, large cast of characters. You're getting multiple different perspectives that aren't the MCs, but you still have kind of main MCs. And there's a lot of fate involved in this. I felt like the world building was pretty impressive. High impact information that was delivered very casually through conversation, political scheming within the first couple of chapters. I felt like I had such a good understanding of what was going on, and I could absorb it really well without feeling like it was info dumping. I think if you love political maneuvering, scheming, this you will love. It has so much of it. Like, that is the majority of this book, is just political schemes. And you're getting bad guys' perspective and their schemes, and you're getting the good guys and what they're trying to do. I think where this kind of lost me, unfortunately, though, is that it felt very bloated and overlong. There's a lot of scenes that I don't think really added to the plot, and it just kind of like dragged it down. There were so many unnecessary details of someone being in a healer tent and healing up, and it just had absolutely nothing to do with our main characters or with pushing the plot forward. I will also say there isn't like a ton of relationship development. A lot of it is just them kind of learning to accept this relationship because it's sort of fated. There wasn't like a ton of character development either. There is big changes in the characters. They have like a certain arc. They basically become the people people that they don't want to become, which is so very depressing. I get that it's a trilogy, but it just didn't make for a very satisfying ending. Now, one thing that really truly left me so perplexed as to how to rate this book was there is a scene in here that is sort of non-con, sort of cheating, and it just really left a bad taste in my mouth. And I think for other romance lovers, it will as well. And I don't know how to talk about this without spoiling it. You know what? I'm going to spoil it. My rating for this one, I have no idea. Sometimes I feel like it's 4 stars. Sometimes I feel like it's 2 star. Okay, let's get into spoilers. When you see the book go down, then you know it's done. I also need to warn you, this truly, truly, truly spoils the book. This spoils a huge plot point. So if you do have any intentions of reading this, definitely skip to when I'm not holding this. Okay, now that they're gone. Basically, the heroine throughout this book is dealing with infertility, and part of her duty as a princess is to give the prince an heir. And so she really has a hard time with this. The villain lady in this book has no problem getting pregnant. She ends up kidnapping the hero, takes him in a drugged state against his will with the goal of trying to have his heir so she can have a claim to his throne. Now, the hero kind of comes to later, and she's like, ha ha ha, here's my evil plan that I've done to you. I might even have your heir in me now. And he's like, well, damn, I do want a son. And so then he kind of does it willingly and kind of almost takes her against her will. Like he kind of was like, yeah, fuck it. I mean, we've already done it the once, so like might as well do it again. And so I didn't like that disloyalty to Sinead, although like Sinead is kind of okay with it. She's like, well, we got to get an heir somehow, and I guess this is how we're gonna do it because I can't give him one. I'm just like, oh girl, you deserve better. You shouldn't have to be dealing with this. That's why I can't figure out how to rate this. Like I enjoyed so much of this, but that scene just, I hated it with every fiber of my being. I had such a hard time. I hated the prince after that. Like I could not, I was gonna say look him in the eye. I was not making eye contact with a single characters. They are very much fiction. That's that book. Oh, since I've been reading physical books, I just found a bookmark that my husband gave to me. Isn't it so cute? Look at him. He's a little kitty. And it's one of those like magnetic ones that goes over the tops of pages. He got me like a whole bunch of these for my birthday. Anyways, I just thought that was cute and I wanted to show you. So those are all the books that I read for April. It was quite a variety. I still feel like I had a good reading month, even though it was a lot of threes this month. But I would love to hear from you if you've read any of these books. Did you like them? Did you hate them? Did you have different opinions than I did? I'd also like to know what you read in April. Tell me about your favorites. Tell me what you hated. Anything and everything about your April reading. And with all of that, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for putting up with my vertigo and my inability to enunciate and my swimmy head. Truly, like at all times, it feels like I'm on the verge of maybe passing out because it's warm and I'm dizzy. So it's just made for an interesting time filming. So hopefully this one, okay. I would love if you could give this video a like if you liked it. Subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me. I post every Friday for the most part. I would love to have you back for more videos, and I really, really do hope I see you on my next video. Bye-bye.